Happy ReZero Day, and that means that every content that I upload that's not a ReZero reaction has monkeys in the comments saying, where is ReZero? Well, if you were smart enough, you know that you could catch the reaction live right now if you just happen to know that, again, every time I go live, what do? I go live on YouTube and let you know I'm streaming, and you can click the link and join us on stream instead of waiting. That rhymed. But before we watch the actual ReZero reaction today, the episode, we're going to do episode 1 and 2 cut content back to back from Aninews to be extra sweaty. Let's get it!
There's a reason why this episode is called The Reason I'm Taking You With Me. The anime doesn't quite make that clear, but in the novel, it all comes down to Subaru.
We're taking Rem with us.
His inner turmoil stemming from conflicting feelings of guilt and desire. After finally finding the means to save the person he wanted to save most, Subaru is unsure whether saving Rem first is actually the right thing to do. In the anime, he kind of just accepts it, but in the novel, it's this whole personal battle he needs to overcome with himself.
What else should be done first, is he asking?
It makes a lot of the scenes have a lot more weight to it as they constantly ask the question, is it okay to be selfless? Is it okay for Subaru to finally choose himself? Well, that and a bunch of other details are...
I feel like he's always been choosing himself, though. While acknowledging, you know, he's saving others, but he's doing it for himself. There was like a whole confession made to Amelia at the end of season 1 about this whole act of like selfish selflessness. But now should we be selfless selfish? Anyways, all I remember is that Subaru wanted himself to be the one to be seen first when Rem wakes up, and I think there's nothing wrong with that.
What we're gonna talk about, so stick around if you want to see everything the anime left out.
Let's get it!
If you want, feel free to leave a like and comment since it really does help the video out. It makes it a lot easier to cover 2 series at once when both are performing well. But anyway.
But first, ad break?
Episode 67.
6-7!
The Reason I'm Taking You With Me. Covering Chapter 7 from Volume 20 of the light novel and Chapter 1 from Volume 21. Several glaring problems still needed solutions after the fight.
People
for
are still
Freestone,
flies.
One of which was Crush and her affliction, while the other was Capella's victims.
The flies.
For both, Subaru did have an answer. It's just both were equally difficult to achieve. For the former, he had no problem absorbing all of Crush's curse himself, while for the latter, that
Bro, he's like taking other people's sins, man. Bro is Jesus Christ.
required taking Capella's witch factor for himself. Neither were very ideal though, so that made both a last resort for when for himself required taking Capella's witch factor for himself. While for the latter, that required taking Capella's witch factor for him.
Well, what?
Victims. For both, Subaru did have an answer. It's just both were equally difficult.
We kill Capella, take her witch factor, and then we can turn other people back to normal. That'd be kind of crazy. That'd be kind of insane. Now, I thought these witch factors and authorities changed based on who you are. You know? Yeah, I know that Invisible Providence, the Unseen Hand, is the same sloth witch factor as Betelgeuse, which is kind of interesting. But I swear to God, the ReZero lore said these authorities, depending on who has it and their own soul and desires, it changes. Anyways, get Capella's witch factor and we change him back.
To achieve. For the former, he had no problem absorbing all of Crush's curse himself, while for the latter, that required taking Capella's witch factor for himself. Neither were very ideal though, so that made both a last resort for when no other answers were available. I mean, it's not like Subaru wanted to go through the pain of absorbing Crush's curse, but he definitely would if it meant relieving Crush of her pain.
Damn,
then,
what a hero.
When it came to acquiring Capella's witch factor, that meant killing her and stealing it. Learning how to use it after was a problem in and of itself, since despite now possessing both Sloth and Greed's witch factor,
yeah, we got
Subaru
Greed.
didn't have.
Wonder how the Greed witch factor is going to develop as an authority for Subaru. I think it'd be too fucking broken though if we just literally got Regulus's, you know, like this power to just put a pause on shit and make it act as if, you know, it does you know, exist in different physics entirely. There's no way we get that.
Subaru didn't have the slightest clue on how to use Greeds, so adding a third on top of that would just make things harder. Now, the biggest problem was of course the victims of gluttony, a fate Subaru once believed couldn't get more tragic than Rem's. Well, with Julius getting to experience his erasure firsthand, That to Subaru had to be even more tragic.
Really? I feel like, to me, this is the least tragic compared to Rem or Krush. Again, it's a subjective thing where do you care about you knowing yourself or do you care about other people's opinion of you? To me, I don't give a fuck if people forget about me. Because what matters is that I know who I am, I know who myself is, and I can simply compel the masses and let them know who I am yet again. But if I lose my sense of self, then I'm nothing and other people know me. Who gives a fuck? I don't want that shit. Yeah, I'd be kind of lonely if other people forgot about me, but I'm different. I just care more about my own ego and myself more. And then you're Rem. Rem is when you're literally just dead. Memory, name gone. You're just nothing. I just feel like it's Rem, Krush, and then Julius in terms of this severity of like Rem being the highest, Yuli being this least, but some people would flip the other two around.
He wasn't one who liked to compare suffering, but to be conscious while the world around you completely forgot about you, that had to be a special type of torture.
Oh, for sure it is.
Just look at how emotional Garfield got when only his mother forgot about him. Imagine that feeling then applied to everyone. So,
I get it.
Subaru could more than sympathize with what Julius was going through, and it's him along with...
But I'm such a selfish, egotistical narcissist that I would feel more pained of not knowing who I am compared to everyone else forgetting about me. It's just different for many people. Like this loneliness, I give no fucks about because I know I can simply just do it all over again. But to many other people, they hold on to these bonds and these memories and it's so important to them. But I don't know, it's like, do you live for other people or do you live for yourself? You gonna suck a dog's dick? Or do you want other people to know that you sucked the dog's dick? Was the one that a kid that was proposing? Crazy example.
So, Subaru could more than sympathize with what Julius was going through, and it's him along with all the other victims that would lead them onto their next mission. A journey to find the all-knowing Shala the Sage.
Oh.
She currently resided in the Pleiades Watchtower across the Agoria Dunes at the far eastern edge.
The flower meadows. Yeah, that's the flower shit that was like consuming the, you know, the bears, right? The Oiran bears. Evil Sealing Stone Shrine. Ooh. That's gotta be where Satala is.
Lagunica, making the trip to her a lengthy one.
Also, there's a place called Flanders. I just thought about, you know, Simpsons. Also, Bonobo. That's like a band.
It was actually the setup for this trip that would largely be cut down. So, Otto would stay behind to heal this trip that... making the trip to her a lengthy one.
Okay.
It was actually the setup for this trip that would largely be cut down. So, Otto would stay behind to heal his legs and retrieve the Tome of Wisdom from Darts, while Garfield would do the same as
Yeah, what's up with that? Because he was testing Roswell's intentions, that if he had planned anything before he made the contract, right, at the end of season 2, that prevents him from just being all this evil schemer anymore, right? We're trying to figure that out, but I don't know, Otto just kind of sus right now.
Darts, while Garfield would do the same as he was the one who had to heal Otto. The city also needed someone to protect them just in case the witch cult came back.
Dumb, dumber, and dumbest. Or the other way around. But honestly, I like them a lot. I like them a lot. No, this fuck just got bottled by Heinkel and that was it. Listen, like, these two, at least they contributed in some way, right? But this fucking mushroom hair dickhead who's actually good in bed for no reason, that's a thing, by the way. He got the divine protection of fucking porn star. Like, he just got bottled in the head by Heinkel and Heinkel got out.
At least until the city was recovered anyway.
This guy!
Subaru and Julius would have a moment amongst the victims of gluttony. A cutscene which highlighted how gluttony was the worst amongst the archbishops. Sure, all the archbishops were the accumulation of the worst possible malice, but the way gluttony desecrated every life they touched made them especially evil.
And there's 3 of them!
Julius, however, had quite the unique perspective, as his precarious situation made the state of the other victims seem like a blessing. Since none would ever know they'd been forgotten, they would never have to experience the anxiety and fear that came with being left behind.
Yeah, again, it's like the whole ignorance is bliss. That like, you don't even know what you lost, so how could you be hurt?
For Julius, having all his bonds severed just like that was painful. It was a pain which made him question whether it was worse to have forgotten or be forgotten.
Nah. It is painful, but that pain will build character. This is the Sigma path, baby.
It was a pain which made him question whether it was worse to have forgotten or be forgotten. That then led to the whole scolding Subaru would give him in this scene here.
Forgetting is the easy way out. but I would rather feel the pain and know who I am and do it all over again. Think of the easy way out and just forget and forget who I am while other people know who, basically know who I am. I don't like that.
A stern talking to that would serve as the motivation for Julius to accompany them. After that came the conversation with Anastasia, still in the city of Pristella since the plan for the watchtower hadn't been formalized yet. Now,
also, there's some people saying like, oh my god, crazy foreshadowing of Julius saying he's going to be punished for this when he kills off Subaru in the run where it's his most heroic death versus the fingers, and Subaru became, one of the fingers, right? And people are saying, oh my god, see, he's getting punished right now. Crazy writing foreshadowing. And I'm like, okay.
The reason Subaru would be so blunt about Anastasia not being who she was is because he wanted to make sure it wasn't lust. It wasn't unlikely that the two swapped places, so that was a worry he needed to dispel quickly.
Or Pandora. Or a shapeshifter, right? Like, again, Gluttony can be a shapeshifter, Pandora can, Capella can. There's a lot of goddamn shapeshifters.
Echidna was the one name he wasn't expecting though, so when Anastasia said it, Subaru naturally snapped. It didn't take long for Echidna to realize Subaru's malice was directed towards her creator, the real Echidna, so making that distinction allowed the two to talk a bit more freely. Subaru wasn't as agreeable as how we saw in the anime though, since with the way Echidna acted just like her creator, that didn't sit too well with him.
This face does look like Echidna's cheeky ass face here.
There was this annoying attitude behind her words that made it seem like she didn't understand how the people she was dealing with were feeling. It was a trait Subaru had become all too familiar with.
Because she's a witch, but also, this Echidna is an artificial spirit that just doesn't know. Autistic spirit that doesn't understand humanity, and Subaru getting pissed off at that.
It's for that reason he would continue probing her for any inconsistencies, one in particular being how she could sense Beatrice was an artificial spirit while somehow Beatrice couldn't do the same for her. Well, she supposedly possessed a sense allowing her to detect artificial spirits, one that didn't really work when used on her. Reason being that she was more of an incomplete artificial spirit.
Okay.
She could neither contract with a human or
what does it look like the dragon's behind her?
Properly utilize her magic, making detecting her true nature difficult. That meant the witch cult could very well have been after her, but whether that was actually true or not.
That's right. One of the requests, right, was hand over the gospel, don't stop the wedding, and hand over the artificial spirit, right? It could have been Biko, could be her, who knows?
No one could say. Now, for a bit more context on why Echidna just couldn't switch back, it all came down to Anastasia's gate. You see, hers was defective from birth, unable to absorb atmospheric mana like how it normally should.
The opposite of Roswell.
A functional gate can absorb mana, store it within the body, then release it, but for Anna, that first step was non-functional. It made it so she was in a chronic state of mana deprivation. This was the exact opposite of how Reinhardt's gate works, since where he absorbs insane amounts of mana, his body can't really expel it. No, instead it's used to significantly enhance all his physical capabilities.
Doesn't the mana think it's unworthy of Reinhardt? I heard something funny about how Reinhardt actually has no mana, but he can use all the mana. You know what I mean?
It's for that reason he can't use magic, but it's also for that very same reason he's so incredibly powerful. It's actually a very similar condition to Subaru's, except where Reinhardt depletes his mana just by living, Subaru unfortunately does not. When it comes to Anastasia, with her never having a sufficient amount of mana, should she ever want to use magic, she would have to rely on her internal mana.
And that
in turn exhausts
breaks her,
which, as we know, is the foundation of life. So, unless Anna willingly chose to shorten her lifespan, she could never contract with a spirit, as doing so requires mana. Why then is Echidna borrowing her body now? Well, it turns out Anastasia was in
Doesn't that look like a dragon?
such a dangerous position she had no choice but to. It was safer to reduce her lifespan than risk dying right there in the moment.
Wonder how much of the lifespan is actually being shaved off and how significant that will have consequences.
Luckily for her, Echidna isn't a high mana consumption spirit.
Okay.
So her existence isn't usually a burden on Anna.
She's pretty chill. Anytime she uses a gun though.
If Echidna didn't know anything other than what her name was, what she is, and who created her, You're probably wondering how she knew about the watchtower then. Well, Aridina chalked it up to fate, but what she really meant is that her creator likely wanted her to go there. It was just like Echidna to etch a path and nothing else into one of her creations. This went to make Subaru nervous, as if something connected to Echidna was waiting at the tower. He knew it definitely wasn't gonna be good.
Interesting. Echidna... What, it wasn't just like a random experimental spirit. It actually had some sort of goal, and the goal was to actually get to the watchtower. Okay.
It was
There were some interesting visuals in the ending today too. In front of the Pleiades watchtower, and there are certain characters of the past, right? Like Reed and Flugel probably, and maybe Hoshin, I don't know. So, we were making some theories about it, and there was a person that kind of looked like Echidna, and Echidna I think might have been hanging around with them, who knows, back in the day. But regardless, we'll see what Anastasia, you know, her goal is, or her role is in the tower.
After that, Aridina would ask a question of her own, and that was what her creator was like. This was a question Subaru refused to answer though, since at the moment, he still wasn't sure whether he could trust her or not. So his connection to Echidna was a secret he would save for a later day. Subaru would then give some tips on how Aridina could better act the part, and finally it would be Aridina who would suggest Subaru should bring Rem. According to her, it was probably best to bring a living example of their problem, so who better than the person Subaru wanted to save most?
Imagine this is the trap. But she suggests to him to bring it. Okay.
In a way, Aridina almost sounded like a devil offering a deal, but to Subaru, this deal was far too good to pass up.
It's too tasty, we'll take it.
Next came a whole cutscene with Reinhardt, the ally Subaru conveniently placed outside his meeting with Anastasia. If it turned out she actually was Lust, then Subaru wanted someone powerful to be there to fight alongside him. So, it was in this conversation that we would hear about Reinhardt's own journey to the Watchtower, a failure which ultimately led to the reason for the royal selection today.
Oh, this is what triggered it?
A failure which ultimately led to the reason for the royal selection today.
Okay.
That's right. Because Reinhardt couldn't get to the tower 2 years ago, he was never able to find a cure to the royal family's illness, and that resulted in all those afflicted by it to end up dying. Why did Subaru think they could get through the desert now then? Well, that's because Aridina told him they could. Apparently, she somehow knew a way to get past.
Wonder how Reinhardt feels about that. Seemingly perfect guy actually fails, and then the royal family all dies off. That's fucked. There's a part of me that I think really wants me to believe that like the dragon did it on purpose through the covenant, the blood pact, that the royal family was somehow falling evil, and that was the best thing they could have done for the kingdom of Lugunica, because the pact says, right, that when Lugunica's in danger, like the dragon will come back.
The barrier. A secret path that completely bypassed it. Subaru would then end the conversation by asking if Reinhardt was okay, mainly because he did just go through something pretty emotional.
Yeah.
Reinhardt made it seem like he was, but whether that was actually true, Subaru wasn't sure.
Reinhardt just puts like a cool face on, but this is really sad, bro. He doesn't have a grandfather anymore. He's just simply the hero now.
All he could do was believe what Reinhardt was saying. If he said that he finished his farewells to his grandmother, then there was no reason for Subaru to not think he was okay. Next came a scene involving Beatrice.
Reinhardt is just suffering in quiet, while everyone thinks that he is this perfect being that can do anything. And that's why I think the connection with Subaru is so significant, because like Subaru actually sees Reinhardt as like a regular human being rather than like a superhero.
Subaru and Amelia, but that was shown.
Imagine like a celebrity that everyone knows, and Subaru is like a normie that has no idea who this celebrity is, and he treats him like an actual human being. And that's why Reinhardt's like, whoa, this is different. That's why it's genuine.
In part for the finale of Season 3. All it did was wrap up the events of the Pristella arc, following it up with Subaru's consideration of whether he could actually take advantage of the circumstances. Specifically, whether he should bring Rem along to save her first or not. Perhaps it was...
Yo, the Appa theory. That blade's there. Apparently in Season 2, in this scene, Subaru thought about killing himself with this dagger. The Appa theory, man. Anytime you see apples, dude, something bad's gonna happen.
Perhaps it was greedy to think he should, but no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't help but wish one more girl was right there with him. So,
Rem.
that brings us now to when they were on their way back home. An opportunity Julius would take to reveal something about his past. I won't say what it is since they'll likely mention it in a future episode, but the reason he did is because he wanted Subaru to know more about him. He was, after all, the sole person in the world that knew him best now.
You got a secret for us? He wants to bond more? Okay, we'll be waiting for that reveal. They really are just like really best friends now. He's the only one that actually knows who he is. Their bond is gonna get stronger. God damn, this is gay.
All the sole person in the world that knew him best now.
Who will be the top and the bottom? I feel like Subaru might be, because he's done that cross-dressing stuff. But then again, Julius, I don't know. Anyways.
It was that same night that Beatrice would come to comfort Subaru, as she alone knew all that which troubled him. His main concern was, of course, Aridina. In identity, he decided not to share with the others, but just to be safe, shared with Beatrice.
Biko
So
knows.
she too was aware of Anastasia's little secret. 10 days later, and they would finally—
It's kind of funny how we figured this out in the break time, right? In the break time episode that we just uploaded, Biko just casually learns about the secret.
10 days later, and they would finally make it back to the manor, making Subaru's total time in Pristella about a month.
Wow.
Petra's initial
1 month.
reaction was filled with a bit more frustration, since what she believed was just a trip to retrieve some magic crystals ended up turning into a full-on war against the witch
A
cult.
whole siege.
So it was only natural she'd be a bit worried about Subaru. Ram was as passive-aggressive as ever, greeting Subaru with just as many insults as you might expect. When it came to Roswell, he was weirdly happy to the point that Subaru thought he was planning something. In actuality, he was just content Amelia made it back, since she was, after all, crucial to his own plans.
Okay.
That said, as useless as Roswell may seem not helping out with any of their endeavors, he was out doing things neither Subaru nor Amelia could do themselves.
There was some interesting politics happening, right? In the break time too, and how he wanted Petra to speak good of Amelia to like the nobles and the other people that needs to be persuaded that will back Amelia if she does get into that role.
What those things are, we don't know, but it was clear Roswell was very content watching Subaru from the sidelines.
I think it is the politics stuff, but again, it's just like break time content that I saw, right? It's cool to see Roswell setting stuff up with other powerful people in Lugunica and maybe other places.
Perhaps one day hoping to obtain proof of return by death. Roswell would then probe into Anastasia a bit, curious to see if she— What those things are, we don't know, but it was clear Roswell was very content watching Subaru from the sidelines.
Okay.
Perhaps one day hoping to obtain proof of return by death.
Proof? How to get proof? But he knows though. All of season 2, he was doing this shit, fully aware that he didn't know how exact the mechanics, right? Like when he was like trying to kick him, he's like, "Come on, why don't you use your power? Come on, why don't you do it?" Right? How could you ever have proof unless you return by death with him? Yeah, I don't know.
Roswell would then probe into Anastasia a bit, curious to see if she would take responsibility for Amelia's hardships. Anastasia was fully prepared to apologize, but everyone seemed to agree the actions of the witch cult were their own. So even if it was Anastasia who brought Amelia into the city, it wasn't Anastasia who caused her to be attacked.
My gut instinct was that she knew ahead of time that a bunch of archbishops were going to pull up, and then invited all the other candidates to, Pristella to, just help out. I don't know, but how much of that was? When did the swap happen? That's another thing we don't know, right? Was it ever clearly defined when Echidna actually took over? I don't think so, but clearly when she was using the spirit gun, by that point, obviously.
Roswell would then ask how she alone knew a secret path towards the tower. A fair question considering information like that was invaluable.
Echidna set it up?
Like, it didn't make sense for someone as money-driven as her not to sell that information. Aridina would just call it one of those things money couldn't buy, and that would be it for Roswell's interrogation.
She lying.
In the end, he wouldn't be happy with Amelia choosing such a difficult path for herself, but at the same time, he wasn't unhappy. If all this
He's like
just
indifferent.
meant Subaru would be challenging himself even further, then that was a path he would willingly let them walk. I mean, Subaru was after all the hope that served as a replacement for his Tome of Wisdom.
Yes.
It was then that Julius
He really is betting everything on Subaru. The #1 fan, bro.
of wisdom. It was then that Julius mistook Roswell's caution for concern, so when he tried to alleviate it by saying it was all to save the others, Roswell immediately questioned if it was actually Julius just wanting to save himself. There was nothing wrong if that was in fact the case, but to suggest it was for others, Roswell didn't really like that. He had no issue calling out what could very well just be empty platitudes.
He likes to talk shit. He doesn't like all this empty virtue signaling and superficial platitudes. He just wants to say it just the honest way.
Julius wasn't so bold as to deny Roswell straight to his face, so instead it would be Anastasia to do it. Subaru was one step away from having an outburst himself, so that's where Roswell decided to call it. All he wanted was to give everyone a bit of perspective.
Okay.
It's unclear whether Subaru was angry for Julius's sake or himself, but with the way Roswell looked at him after, it was clear he saw right through him. Subaru's intent to save Rem couldn't have been very different from Julius's own intent to save himself, so
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just Roswell just wants to confront him and say, tell me your deepest, honest desires instead of sugarcoating it around, to make it sound good and holier than thou.
the question then was it selfish to do so? Well, ever since his conversation with Aridina, Subaru had been feeling guilt. He felt
I'm not gonna lie, I fucking hate saying Foxy Dona or Eridna. Both of it pisses me off. I'd rather just call her Echidna or Anastasia. It's just the same fucking girl just LARPing in that accent.
guilty that he got to save himself from suffering before everyone else. It's that hesitation the anime doesn't really show us, and that then brings us to an even more emotional point. No one except for Roswell was gonna
No, all those names are fucking annoying. Genuinely. Foxy Dona, Eridna, Eridona, Scarf Dona. It's just, fuck you.
complain about Subaru wanting to be happy. So, even if waking up Rem took all the attention away from her, Amelia knew all she needed to do was work harder to bring Subaru back to her side.
Okay.
Regardless of whether it was her, Rem, Beatrice, or anyone else, Amelia was intent on Subaru being happy with whoever he was with.
That's not... I don't think he wants to hear that.
This was all Subaru needed to hear for his hesitation to
Does he though? I thought he wants her for it. Like, that's basically Amelia saying, oh, I'm happy with whatever girl you pick.
go away, so with her and Beatrice's support, he could now focus on Rem without worry.
Okay.
Next came a cutscene with just Beatrice and Roswell, but on the
Oh, okay. This is some spicy shit. What are they talking about?
off chance they decided to show it later, I'll refrain from talking about it in this episode.
No!
This brings us now to the melee
Come on. When those two are in private, bro, they be talking about some juicy shit. But alright, fine.
scene, a conversation which would involve everyone. First, Aridina would immediately pick up on this miasma-like aura. She knew it wasn't exactly the same, but something about it felt extremely familiar. Now, with Meili playing with her dolls right before they entered,
Okay.
Amelia would make the mistake of commenting about it. Naturally,
Go back to the miasma?
pick up on a conversation about it in this episode. This brings us now to the Meili
She
scene,
smelled it
a
from Meili?
conversation which would involve everyone. First, Aridina would immediately pick up on this miasma-like aura.
From who? What are we talking about? From Meili? Are we talking about from Subaru? Or are we
She knew it wasn't exactly the same, but something about it felt extremely familiar. Now, with Meili playing with her dolls
From
right before
who?
they entered, Amelia would make the mistake of commenting about it. Naturally, Meili would get all embarrassed, and that in turn made starting the conversation difficult.
Okay.
It had forced Subaru to use his trump card early, a stuffed animal he'd been working on the trip back here.
It's very cute.
This was a direct result of all of Subaru's hard work, specifically his drastically improved sewing skills. In fact, every toy
He's
Meili
too good
had
at
was
this.
handcrafted by Subaru.
This is
To any
crazy.
random outsider, such a gesture would probably be seen as kindness, but to Julius, who knew Subaru's reputation, he definitely wasn't beating the allegations.
You have a very unique skill set that can, make a lot of little girls happy, huh?
Subaru would then fill Julius in on why Meili was being kept here, making note of her assassination attempts and her ability to control mob beasts.
Very powerful.
Normally, mob beasts weren't the type of creatures that could be tamed by people, but Meili's blessing allowed her to control them the same way their very own horns did.
I think it's such an OP blessing. Like, definitely one of the... I don't know if it's one of the best ones, but damn, is it ever useful in this world?
As for why she was being kept here now, Aside from the risk of letting her go, if Mother found her, there was no doubt
That dog. Remember the bald shaman dog?
she'd kill her. So, in a way, keeping Meili here was for her own safety too.
Okay, Capella's the
Why
mother.
did the Amelia camp want to keep her safe? Well, that just came down to choice. There was no valid reason to not punish
It's because she's a cute lolly. We just don't go around just killing cute lollies like that, I guess. And her powers are too valuable and we can use it, and it's very useful right now in this arc.
someone who they knew was a killer, but at the same time they couldn't bring themselves to properly take it out on her. In the end, it just came down to what they felt was right. Subaru knew his actions were contradictory to his beliefs, but for Meili, he and Amelia agreed to make an exception.
Okay.
Now, with Subaru's gift making Meili more talkative, 3 major problems would be identified by her. The first were the dens of mob beasts, which she technically could take care of. The second was the Desert of Illusion Aridina supposedly knew how to cross. Then the third was the miasma. In the novel, that first problem was such an obstacle that after seeing Subaru struggle to come up with a solution for it, it was Meili herself that would offer to join them, not Subaru formally asking her.
Really?
This was a suggestion he was completely okay with, since on the off chance it was just an excuse to escape, it's not like Meili was being forced to stay in the manor anyway. Sure,
It sounds like she just wants to help out and she cares.
they may call her room a prison, but if there was ever a time when Meili wanted to leave, Subaru fully intended to let her do so.
Wow.
All he asked was that she at least write to them, a simple means of making sure she was doing okay. Such was concern that appealed to Meili in ways she never expected, causing her to see why Subaru was so favored by Beatrice and Petra now.
By the little girls? No, I think it's like her being like an assassin and being this cold-hearted, blooded business and not having any, social network or friends or any family or people treating her well. And this guy shows up and he's so wholesome about it, and he acts like he cares and he actually does care, and she's compelled by it and she wants to return the favor. That's what I'm feeling.
With Anastasia and Julius being there too, Subaru definitely wasn't ever gonna beat the allegations. Next came a whole cutscene with Petra, but due to
Petra
the size of
headbutt!
it, it'll probably be included next episode.
Okay.
That then brings us to the moment with Rem, the only place where Subaru could ever show his weakness. With Amelia, he only ever showed this unyielding courage ready to give his all to her, and with Beatrice, he only ever showed a trust tantamount to putting his life in her hands. When it came to the girl that was Rem though, she alone saw the weakness Subaru always kept hidden.
That's true. Has there ever been a scene where like he has been this vulnerable to other girls? Not really. Only to Rem. And that's why this is actually so special, and why it's also kind of sad, because he just recharges and, she saves him. She lifts him up so that he can go fuck other girls.
So it was during this time
Otto? Yeah, that's a unique one with the friendship. But Otto's a girl? Otto's Pandora. Little girl user, by the way.
that Subaru would often read to her from his journal, a log of everything he and the others got up to. He didn't want her to be left behind by those who cherished her. So, day after day, this is what Subaru had done, hoping one day he might actually be able to save her. Well, at
I think that time's coming pretty close, and if it's not gonna happen this season, it's never gonna happen, bro.
long last that time had finally come, and though this breakthrough wasn't of his own effort, the path ahead definitely would be. The dangerous journey to the Watchtower was intended for Rem and Rem alone. Subaru fully acknowledged it as selfish, but just like how she had devoted herself to him once before, it was now his turn to do the same for her.
I think she deserves it. And is it selfish? Yes, absolutely. Are we putting other people in danger? Yes, absolutely. But I think they would walk into hell together with Subaru at this point. The faith is there. And I think we can also get a lot of stuff out of this too that can probably help Amelia. Like, Ulysses is gonna benefit from this too. This entire and Echidna too, right? With Eridona in there. Yeah, it is selfish, but sometimes I think it's okay to be selfish, especially if the intent is in good hands.
So that's where episode 1 ends off, wrapping up what was quite a lot.
All
It's
right.
pretty obvious the anime's just trying to get to the desert, so
Yeah.
I expect a bit more cut content before then. In any case,
Thank you, Mater Aninews, for the first part of the cut content, but we got another one coming. The thing that really stood out to me in this episode, cut content, I kind of found the Roswell stuff interesting, with him calling out other people's bullshit. There's also some interesting stuff being set up for like Julius, you know, trying to tell Subaru something, but not just yet. You know, they're bonding harder than ever. I guess the most important thing that was kind of skipped is Subaru's, what's the word? Guilt of the whole selfishness, right? Of, is it okay for me to do this? I think it is. Now, part 2, baby. Episode 2 cut content. We getting sniped. Let's go.
After pretty much one-lifing the entire arc of Season 3, it's refreshing to see Subaru back on the struggle train again. I'm not gonna say I enjoy seeing him suffer more than I enjoy seeing him.
Actually, Subaru died multiple times versus Sirius, and how many times did he die right away? A couple times immediately versus Sirius too, right? But man, Shala sniping Subaru back to back to back, that shit was haunting.
Succeed, but it is more entertaining to see him overcome what seems like an unbeatable situation.
It's more fun that way.
To not know which loop will finally be that successful one, that to me is where ReZero shines best.
Yes, and that's why I think a lot of people wanted, like, people want him to die, right? We want to see that, like, you know, like all of Arc 3, even like the run where you made it. This is the home stretch. You did it. And then the heroic sacrifice. That fingers, when he turns into one of the fingers, bro. Holy shit, that was hype.
So, for Subaru to be back in one of those conflicts where you're just not sure whether he'll
no,
survive or
Betty!
not, I'm thinking we've definitely got a lot to look forward to. That said, the anime did skip out on a decent amount to get here.
Okay.
From the truth of Ram's condition to what the miasma actually is, there's so much more from this episode to talk about. There were even a few extra emotional moments from Subaru's deaths too.
The tears being wiped away.
If you want to know the full extent of what's happening in the story right now, stick around as we'll talk about all of that.
But first...
and if you're interested in that time I got reincarnated as a slime, I've also been talking about that too.
we gotta get on that shit too. Don't worry, I'll be getting on that pretty soon.
But anyway, episode 68.
6-8.
Overcome Sand Time. Covering chapter...
Oh, today's episode is 69. Nice number. I'm sure they didn't plan it, but episode 69 is gonna be a fucking insane one.
2 and 3 from volume 21 of the light novel. Prior to the group's departure, there were a few cutscenes involving a lot of the side characters, one of which was Roswell and Beatrice.
What are they talking about?
They were having a discussion by themselves, Roswell mocking Beatrice's switch to Subaru's side, and Beatrice countering with the fact her relationship with Subaru was far better than whatever relationship Roswell had with Mother.
Okay.
More importantly than that, though,
Talking
was the
shit?
confirmation from both Subaru now had a second witch factor within him.
Yeah, agreed.
Their discussion surrounding it was incredibly vague, but 2 lines in particular really stood out to me. The first was Beatrice saying how there should be other candidates
Sage candidates.
aside from Subaru, and the second was Roswell mentioning something about being overlapped.
But none of them were as close as he was or overlapped. Close to what? Close to the truth? Why is Sage Subaru a Sage candidate? Because everything he's done so far has just been fucking perfect? Imagine past Sages also have returned by death. Because what's the whole Sage, right? You know everything. Everything just works out. Don't you feel like that's possible because Subaru has returned by death? So they're as close. I just feel like we're talking about his progression or how just spot on he is whenever he's in the, you know, correct routes.
I couldn't tell you what any of it meant, but with Beatrice refusing to allow Subaru to gain any more witch factors, I'm assuming that caution stems refusing to allow Subaru to gain any more witch factors.
Biko's preventing him?
What any of it meant, but with Beatrice refusing to allow Subaru to gain any more witch factors,
You what?
I'm assuming that caution stems from Subaru being at risk of losing his identity.
Okay.
Whatever that risk may be. So long as Beatrice was alive, Subaru would always be Subaru.
So the witch factor and the authority that rises from within, the more you have, sounds like the more you lose your sense of self. And Biko wants to prevent that. I'm not sure if that's what Aninews is, you know, implying here, but interesting. But I want to see that greed come out, bro. Come on.
After came a cutscene with Petra and Subaru, basically involving
Petra headbutt.
complaining about how Subaru was going somewhere dangerous again. Her complaints were absolutely justified, but to Subaru, this was a job only he could do. Even if there was someone better suited for the job than him, Subaru wanted his face to be the first Rem saw
That's
when
right.
she woke up. With
And it will, hopefully.
fiber of his being, he wanted to be the one who saved her.
Also, if we brought Reinhardt, it'd be kind of cheat, right? Again, I think that it is probably the first and the last time we'll ever have Reinhardt hard carry us like that through an arc. I know that he pretty much hard carried us during the Elsa arc, but like, how long after that did we see Reinhardt again actually putting in work into the main story, helping Subaru, right? With an overpowered character like that, how do you balance them? You can't just have them be around and solve everything for Subaru.
So, knowing just how selfish and egotistical such a reason was, Subaru was ready for Petra to hate him forever. Instead, she would headbutt him right in the stomach, her way of telling him she understood.
Petra
All
headbutt!
she asked in return was that Subaru come back like he always did.
Okay.
So, it was then that Subaru would make her a promise. He would promise that she alone would always get the privilege of being the first one to welcome him back.
Okay. That's kind of nice. All right, we got a little thing going on with Petra. Hey, not like that though.
This brings us now to where episode 2 begins, the final steps of preparation for their convoy. Now, the reason Subaru and Beatrice were placed on the side that needs protecting is because even with Beatrice, together their combat ability was only equal to Ram's.
Which is Ram upscale. A nerfed Ram, by the way. Ram without horn.
Now, the reason Subaru and Beatrice
No,
were
that's
placed on the side
crazy.
that needs protecting is because even with Beatrice,
Ram
together their combat ability was only equal
upscale.
to Ram's. That's not to say that isn't
Ram
still
solos
impressive,
white
but when
whale.
compared to the likes of Julius and Amelia, it was best to leave the serious fights to them. Surprisingly, Julius would be included in this conversation with Roswell, mainly because Roswell had seen enough to trust him.
Yeah, he's like, who the fuck are you? He low-key at the end of the conversation was like, I don't really know who you are, but considering you're in this room, I guess you're important, huh?
Not only that, without Roswell even explaining anything, Julius had already assumed his concern for Ram was because of her constitution. It's then that Roswell would actually go on to explain the specifics, but before I talk about that, it's likely they're saving that for a future episode. That being
Fine.
the case, if you don't want to know, skip ahead to here.
Nice. 420, nice. Yeah, well, I'm just assuming that it just has to do with, Ram not having like the constitution, what's going on with her. She lost the horn, and every time, she's doing, like she's on Roswell's lap, and he's fingering the fucking slit on her head and maintaining the mana. I don't know, just like helping her up, but we'll skip it for now.
Ram's condition is pretty similar to Subaru's, except where Subaru has Beatrice to regulate his defective gait, Ram always had Roswell. It's the reason she privately visited Roswell every night.
And if she doesn't have Roswell, what's gonna happen? Does Ram start crashing the fuck out? I don't know. Is it like a ticking time bomb?
Subaru just assumed that was something a bit more suggestive, but now that he knew what those
What you mean by that?
suggestive,
this Rami was so nice.
but now that he knew what their secret meetings were really
Yeah, it's nothing sus, okay? There's nothing freaky going on. He's just helping her, and this is healthcare, okay?
for, he was incredibly embarrassed by his misunderstanding.
I think everyone assumed that. But on top of that, like, I don't think this is a misunderstanding. Don't you think Ram actually is like doing some, I don't know, like some like Ram clearly wants Roswell down bad, and she is so forceful with this. So when she's on his fucking lap and he's fingering her hole, like, come on, do you really think there's nothing more going on?
Now, the reason Julius was involved in this conversation at all is because Roswell pegged him as the best
Now we're talking about pegging?
substitute to regulate Ram's odd. Doing so required someone who could manipulate multiple colors of magic, a talent Roswell assumed Julius had due to all the spirits surrounding him.
Interesting.
Well, as we saw in the anime, while those spirits did still hover around him,
Yeah, they're like, who is this guy? His spirits are still sticking around, but they don't know who he is. They're like, what the fuck? But we'll stick around, I guess.
the connection granting him their power was severed. If not for that, he would have helped out Ram for sure.
Huh.
It's for that reason Amelia would have to step in his stead. Beatrice too, as her knowledge would prove invaluable. Together, both should be able to assist Ram the same way Roswell did.
And if it doesn't get assisted? Dude, I can't wait to find out. I hope it's not like, oh, Ram gets sick. Oh, Ram is, got the fevers now, and now she's gonna die. That would just be boring as fuck. Like, I want her to be like crash out Ram. Like this shit start to like become volatile and she just grrr.
It was then that Ram would show up with Rem. The latter, now in a wheelchair, Subaru personally helped recreate using memories from his old world.
Crazy.
Of course, he wasn't skilled enough to build it by himself, but with
Still.
the help of craftsmen from the industrial hub of Lagunica, a wheelchair like this was easy. Subaru wanted to be the one to push Rem himself, but that was a task Ram quickly made clear was hers. For
No,
Subaru,
Barasu.
that was a bit disappointing, but with his two newly freed hands, they would both be held by Amelia and Beatrice instead.
Okay.
Both were quick to recognize
Apples.
Subaru's pain, so in a heartwarming moment, they would do what was necessary to comfort him. In fact, with Petra wanting to do the same and Rem one successful trip away from being awoken herself, Julius as a neutral observer put it best. When all was
Surrounded by such beautiful women, you truly are blessed, but I cannot help but wonder whether your two hands are enough to satisfy LD's beauty. Hey, don't worry, baby. That's how we got Invisible Providence. That's how we have the authority of Sloth, right? We got multiple hands coming out. They can hold on to them hands too.
observer put it best. When all was said and done, though, it was an affectionate start to what would be at least a 2-month journey for them. Getting
2
to
months?
the dunes took at least 20 days, a rather peaceful journey
Oh
as
my
the
God.
roads within Lagunica were safe. Still, Julius would be on watch while Subaru held the reins, an arrangement where the burden of reacting was on Julius. That didn't mean Subaru was allowed to lose focus either, though, as a single yawn was enough to garner a warning from Julius. To him, a telegraphed opening such as that was something he wanted to avoid.
So sweaty,
In the
bro.
meantime,
Can't even
they had
yawn.
that discussion about Julius and his spirits, then after came a lengthy discussion about Reinhardt.
Oh.
They both wondered who Reinhardt was before he was Reinhardt.
Oh.
Ever since Julius met
Okay.
Reinhardt back when they were 10 years old, in the 10 years since, Reinhardt hadn't changed a bit. The Reinhardt of today was the same fully developed, fully self-aware hero as the Reinhardt back then.
I just feel like he came out of the womb like this. What is this supposed to be like? Maybe he was like a sweet little boy, you know? Innocent Shota that never asked for any of this but simply had to step up to the plate because he's the chosen one?
So, despite Subaru and Julius both having their own worries on what they were and weren't capable of, they wondered if Reinhardt, this pinnacle to humanity, ever felt the same.
All the time. I think we've seen that plenty throughout. And the fact that he can only be a hero, which is something that Puck also says, right? It's because he's so perfect. It's because he is such a Giga Chad that he can't relate to anybody. Everyone sees him as this like hero again, right? This like objective perfectiveness. But when he fails to do something like the whole Tiresias stuff with grandfather family relationship, or even like not being able to get to the watchtower and then, you know, not being able to save the Lugunican family, right? I'm sure that has its own set of like extra pressure put onto him. And the only person that can actually see him as a human being again is Subaru, and that's why it's, you know, a genuine friend.
He certainly didn't back when he was 10 years old, but perhaps prior to inheriting his grandmother's blessing at the young age of 5. Either way, to Julius, Reinhardt was the person he looked up to most. He hoped one day to embody even a portion of his character.
Glaze.
Now, 3 days later, the group would arrive in Mirala, the self-proclaimed easternmost town in the world. Here they would arrive at
Self-proclaimed most eastern? Because we can still go more east until we start seeing the Great Waterfall, if that's even real. The world of ReZero is flat again. Remember, by the way, it's just flat. Who knows, man?
that tavern, and in that tavern, Subaru would finally learn what miasma was. In short, miasma was just the word for mana polluted by something bad.
Polluted
The
mana.
reason this was such a roadblock is because, just like breathing, mana is naturally absorbed by the body through a person's gait.
Okay.
If one is surrounded by an environment where that mana is tainted, then over time your body would react negatively as if taking in poison gas. Small amounts of miasma were generally okay, but when it came to the miasma here, this was about as dense as it got anywhere in the world.
Because it's closer to Satala Seal.
That being the case, prolonged exposure to it would undoubtedly cause your heart and body to be swallowed up by the pollution of it. What happened then? Well, apparently you just go crazy. Your
That's probably what's going on in the Watchtower, right? Everyone seems to just going crazy and losing it.
heart and body deteriorate to the point you're not yourself anymore.
And then, on top of that, you have Subaru, who, after every return by death, has the scent of the witch get stacked up higher and higher. which again probably is the same category as this miasma. So he has to play this on an even more insane difficulty level.
This brings us now to a cutscene with the dragons, specifically the moment Joseph was added to the party.
Joseph kind of a fucking L dragon. This fuck just kept again. It's the Oidan bear's natural predator or prey, whatever, right? So I get it. Joseph was fucking popping off.
Joseph was added to the party. He was swapped in only after they arrived at Marula, mainly due to his species being far better suited for sandstorms. Patrash was a Diana dragon herself, so that meant she performed well in every environment.
Okay.
She was a breed said to be a descendant of the first dragon. Even if she wasn't, though.
What?
She was a breed said to be a descendant of the first dragon.
Whoa. What? Who's the first dragon? Is it Volcanica? Is Patrash a descendant of Volcanica? What is this?
Performed well in every environment.
Whoa.
She was a breed said to be a descendant of the first dragon.
Also, what? Okay. Okay, clearly Patrash isn't a dragon. So did a dragon fuck a horse? What is Patrash? Okay, I just hear earth dragons, right? We just say, okay, sure, it's just like a little dragon looking thing that's running around, okay? But like, it's not an actual dragon. So like, at what point? What point did the first dragon fucking fuck another species and start crossbreeding until this thing came out?
Even if she wasn't, though, there was no way she would be left behind no matter how hard Subaru tried. Reason being that the incident in Pristella left her upset.
Patrash upset! Yo, it's crazy how we have Biku, Emilia, and Patrash in the same fucking frame here. Because Patrash is best girl. People fucking put Patrash over Rem, man.
Just like every other woman in Subaru's life, she didn't like not being relied on when Subaru needed help.
Yeah.
So after being locked away for the entire conflict in Pristella, for a short time after, Patrash would refuse to interact with Subaru.
Oh, mad.
It wasn't until Otto
Patrash mad.
to explain why that Subaru finally understood Patrash just wanted to protect him.
This is some fun slice of life happening, huh? Yo, let's go, Otto.
Patrash wasn't the only one trying to be gallant, as Subaru too wanted to look out for Ram. You see,
really?
After 20 days, it was clear Beatrice and Emilia's treatment wasn't enough, so Subaru was always making sure she wasn't exerting herself.
Oh no.
Of course, Ram was a bit embarrassed she was the cause of so much worry, but at the same time, she refused to let herself be a hindrance. Whether out of fear of being left behind or simply wanting to do her part, Ram was fully committed to seeing this through.
Yeah, she's got that dog in her, man. You don't want to be seen as weak or a vulnerability. You want to prove that you're strong.
It was then that Emilia and Ram would—
Oh, that deadbeat! Yo, I forgot about Puck. What's Puck up to these days? I don't know. We were trying to find some kind of crazy monostone to put Puck back in, did we not? Wasn't that the whole point of going to Pristella, or at least a part of it? Puck's just floating around in the spiritual atmosphere, huh? Okay.
share a rare moment together, Ram noticing how Emilia acted a lot more confident, while Emilia happy Ram could act more comfortable around her. Before, she was always envious that Subaru got to see Ram's true personality, but on this trip, she got to experience it too.
Okay.
So it seems the two of them were becoming a little bit closer.
Like no more professional, you know, height Emilia-sama, but more of like maybe she talks shit to Emilia too.
Finally, the group would arrive at their very first obstacle, crossing the desert during sand time.
Oh, sand
This
time.
wasn't a random occurrence like
Suna
how you may
time.
think, but rather a phenomenon occurring 3 times daily. Once in the morning, once midday, then once in the middle of the night.
Very
These
disciplined.
weren't your
It's not
typical
a schedule.
sandstorms either, as the miasma infused with it meant they were essentially traversing a toxic waste dump.
Ew.
Fun fact, that's actually why the desert is a desert in the first place. It's not the climate or geography that makes this place covered in sand, it's the miasma killing any and all foliage.
Oh my god. There is also a lot of flowers into some region. Like we even saw like a flower bed, right? I wonder why that is not impacted. But then the Oidan bears apparently are being consumed by the flowers. So I feel like these flowers are just very super parasitic things that may even thrive in the miasma.
So, unlike the arid deserts we know, the desert here had rain and wasn't even hot. It simply flowed with toxic poison.
Okay.
Now, the longest sand time always happened at night, so it was the right call to hunker down.
Imagine if this sand time could traverse all the world of ReZero. Sounds like a crazy threat. Wonder if that's how Satella was grazing half the world, right? She destroyed half the world, they said. The sand, miasma shit. Anyways.
It was the right call to hunker down like how we saw in the anime. Meily's powers kept them safe while she slept as well, so that was another problem they didn't have to worry about.
Let's go, Meili.
The only problem left then was the miasma. Based on how people were starting to talk less to each other, it was clear it was starting to cause fatigue and weariness.
Everyone getting mad,
Not only
upset.
that, there was a possibility the warp space not letting them get anywhere was a natural trap caused by the miasma. Perhaps like a bottomless swamp or the mirages you see in a real desert, this could be something similar. A naturally occurring threat to life that whoever built the tower just decided to take advantage of.
Is it a naturally? I don't know. I feel like if it wasn't natural, it sounds more cool that there's someone's intentionally doing this.
The watchtower was, after all, meant to keep surveillance over the place where the Witch of Envy was sealed, so the question then was which came first, the watchtower or the trap? If it was the trap,
I don't know.
that meant it wasn't made by humans, and something natural like that might not even have an answer on how to overcome it. In the end, Ram would be the only person who could find that answer, so despite being in extraordinary
Clairvoyance,
pain,
OP.
she would lend her services anyway.
Her eyes were
This
bleeding
would
at one
actually
point.
turn out to be a multi-day endeavor, since not only did it require a lot of trial and error, the only times they could try was during one of the 3 sand times. 3 days was how long it took for them to finally reach a breakthrough, the bird switch would lead them directly out of the sand time. You see, it wasn't
The white
natural for
bird.
a bird like this to exist in such a harsh environment, so the only way it could possibly survive here is if there was some sort of secret.
Okay.
That was the reasoning for his choice to follow it, and sure enough, that secret was a hidden garden of sorts.
Shadow Garden. Nah, it can't be. What's with that bird, dude, bro? It's fucking... it's Pandora to me.
Now, those flowers were actually parasites feeding off whatever creature the Orin bears were, since while they definitely had the silhouette of a bear, whatever lay underneath wasn't. You see, with the way the roots of the flower extended all the way around the creature's body, that merely gave it the form of a bear. The sunken eyes underneath made it clear that this was more like a walking corpse.
Okay.
What happened next was exactly as we saw in the anime.
Joseph
Triggering a stampede of bears, the group fending them off with an impressive display of teamwork, then a flash of light vaporizing Subaru's head instantly.
Shala.
No one was able to call out what happened or even react, as everyone who saw it got vaporized the exact same way, the dragons included.
Why is she doing this? And it sounds like she was happy when she found Subaru too. Is she trying to test him? Are you worthy? Right? She is the sage and he is a sage candidate. I don't know. I feel like if you're going to taste the sage, it's going to be... Well, maybe that's the whole thing, right? You're a sage and you are supposed to solve problems, right? So figure this shit out. Let's see if you really are worthy.
So, in only a mere instant, multiple...
Or she knows he has returned by death. How about that? I feel like a sage should know all. And I think it makes sense that Shala, shooting like this, is fully aware that he can get multiple chances and eventually figure it out.
flashes of light had wiped out their party just like that. Of course, Subaru only bore witness to his, but that was the fate of the group in this loop. In the end, nothing remained but sand. Now, this type of death was rather unique, as when it came to after, usually Subaru would feel either pain, shock, or fear. Sometimes it was an intense pain that made him want to cry, other times it was a blood-curdling shock, then finally there was the terror of losing everything.
Has he become numb to it?
However, Subaru felt none of that, instead realizing this was more of a kind death.
What? Merciful death. Peaceful.
It had happened so fast that he wasn't even able to perceive it. It was as if he just blinked then returned to the past.
There was no time to process it. The snipe was so painless and immediate. We're just like, whoa, what the hell? Did I just do that anyways?
For Subaru, it wasn't so much the fact he died that was bothering him, but rather the fact his checkpoint was here.
No
He
time to
was
think.
bothered by how little time to respond he now had.
These are the worst checkpoints, just like the serious checkpoint when she's doing her speech into the courtyard and there's no time to think and we're like, oh shit, what do we do?
Then, with the way everything repeated the exact same way it happened before, this to Subaru was the first time he'd experienced a reset he'd call a waste. Sure, there were plenty of times where he'd died failing
waste.
to learn anything new from the previous loop, but this was the first time he'd found himself incapable of doing anything different.
It's kind of scary, right? How do you solve a problem when you don't even notice that problem? It just happens so fast, you have no clue what's going on. That is a different level of like anxiety.
As they were now, they were on track to repeating the very same mistake they made the first time, all without having the opportunity to learn anything new.
And Mayday every time, just adding on to the tension in Subaru's head.
So, with very little room to maneuver at all, Subaru was worried his ability to return by death might have just been backed into a corner. Regret overwhelmed him as he knew no value was to be gained from his previous loop.
And imagine we just keep looping over and over again with nothing to gain and no way to figure out the problem. That's kind of scary in itself.
Still, he would try to make the most out of it anyway, but as we saw, the outcome was unsurprisingly the same. Patrash's effort would be nothing more than a futile
on her
attempt to block
birthday!
the unblockable, merely prolonging what would have been quick and painless. Beatrice would then do all she could to support Subaru's limp body, while Subaru would do all he could to try and comfort her. When nothing of his physical body worked, instead, Subaru drew on something that wasn't part of his body.
Oh.
That's right, despite knowing this loop was over, Subaru would still use every bit of his remaining energy to use an invisible hand to wipe Beatrice's tears away.
Yeah, that's the good content. There was some, what's it called? There was a bunch of different acts that Subaru told that he would do to Satala or something, and one of them was wiping her tears away. And what does that mean here, though? I don't know. It's just like a reference.
The second shot merely put Beatrice out of her misery first, while whatever remained of Subaru was left to the mob beasts. Subaru wasn't sure whether it was them that dealt the final blow or something else, but what he did know was his brain couldn't comprehend anything anymore. It was that confusion that he would quickly have to overcome, ultimately leading to the move which would save them. Subaru wasn't sure what the cost of doing so would be, but in the moment he activated his power, something inside him felt like it was being torn away. It was a far different feeling from all the other times he'd used it.
What?
Normally, the invisible hand would bring with it the intense feeling of having lost half his body, but for some reason what he felt here was nothing.
What?
If anything, he was just breathing a little heavier. It's not like that was necessarily a good thing though, since there was no benefit in getting used to a power that was undoubtedly harming himself.
Is this just proficiency? Just mastery over the authority?
This, however, wasn't the time to figure that out, so instead the group would fall back for a meeting.
Anyways, don't worry about
They
it.
would commend Meili for her efforts in the field, then ask if anything could be done about the bears. If there were less than 100, she definitely could, but for a garden of this size, she sensed there were more. Perhaps thousands or even tens of thousands. So, to continue forward, that meant she'd have to focus on the more immediate bears, moving only those in front, then hoping it wouldn't disturb any of the other ones.
Okay.
Further discussions about the sand time.
I thought people were saying that there's like some level difficulty and like powerful mobbies that she can't control. And I'm like, but how does she control the guilty level? But no, this is about volume. There's too many.
Revealed it was similar in nature to Beatrice's passage, making it a distortion in space that could spit out those who traverse it anywhere. Finally came the talk about the light, the truth of which Subaru would have to skirt without revealing how he came about it. Remember, anything even hinting at return by death was taboo. So, Subaru would have to chalk his warning up to instinct, a message Ram would be surprisingly acceptive of.
But they all listen. That's the coolest part. Which is really frustrating in the past because no one would ever listen to him. Anytime he said shit that was like literally future sight. And they begin all suspicious. How do you know that? And the suspicion then works against him. But now it's like we've earned this trust.
Reason being that this to her was the natural development of those lucky enough to survive as many dire situations as Subaru. Just as a field rat knows to change its den before the rain comes, Subaru seemed to pick up on danger before it actually struck. Then, as if Subaru was being targeted by a sniper, a red dot akin to a laser pointer would appear right on his chest.
Bang!
The next instant, a flash of light would come barreling towards him,
Emilia.
except this time the others
Raw
would be there to
ass.
help him.
I am
Amelia
the
would
bone.
create a chestplate device to block the initial impact, then Julius would intercept it right as it was about to penetrate that chestplate.
Yo, this is the art for that scene? That's crazy. I think that, man, like making an anime out of a light novel, I think is way harder than making an anime out of a manga, right? Because the idea is, the whole process of making an anime, you need to understand how the panels are going to flow. But when you have a light novel, you don't have panels. You just have dialogue and some key art here and there. So for the storyboarding to take this simple light novel art and provide that crazy ass scene with Julius fucking crashing this thing at the end, like, man, that's crazy. The vision, man, to see this direction.
A chestplate device to block the initial impact, then Julius would intercept it
Wild.
right as it was about to penetrate that chestplate. The chestplate wasn't even enough to delay the attack for a complete second, yet still Julius was able to react fast enough. In fact, with the way they showed it go
That's a
down
cool
in the
scene
anime,
here.
this has got to be one of my favorite scenes with
Julius.
Julius.
Yeah, Julius, like, this scene was really well done. The speed, even Amelia erecting those barriers one by one, such a cool trope that we see in anime when we're like a you know, an unstoppable object is moving, right? A force is moving, and then we erect like an immovable object, and the crash, and then Julius's high speed, the zoom into his face here. Right? This right here, the smearing, the laser eyes, the speed and the weight of that attack, so fucking good.
This has got to be one of my favorite scenes with Julius.
Yeah, it's
Perhaps
cool.
even better than a lot of scenes with Reinhardt.
I mean, but this one had aura, you know? I think in terms of production value, this is also one of the best scenes. This art doesn't do Reinhardt any justice. But that entire scene where the camera is rotating with Elsa moving around and Reinhardt just in the middle, just, you know, deflecting shit, and then the beam attack, that had a lot of fucking aura. But the Julius scene, this is more like, I don't know. It was a really cool scene.
The fact Julius is a normal person makes the feat even more impressive, so perhaps he's a bit stronger than we think he is.
Just a regular knight, by the way. He's a spirit knight too, currently nerfed. That was just base martial arts. And it looks like he's gonna have a training arc with Reed later on too, so that's gonna be cool.
In any case, with one layer of ice not being enough, Amelia's next defense would consist of 6.
This is where you do the one-to-one elitist crying and say, I can't believe they didn't have Julius or Amelia hood on during the segment in the anime. And it is so disrespectful to the source material, and my immersion is ruined dropped.
Again, the needle would break through, but now it was slow enough for Julius to intercept without difficulty. It also gave Subaru time to activate EMT, so the third attack was no faster than a simple arrow.
EMT literally means Amelia is an angel. Mega angel. It's so cringe. But EMT has been a thing since season 1, and now for it to be an actual skill, hey man, that's pretty cool.
This gave Ram the opportunity to sync with whoever the attacker was, confirming the target was in fact Subaru. Moments later, the world beneath them would crack, and their fall into darkness is what would wrap up the episode.
The end.
So that's pretty much it for that, and with that, I'd say ReZero is making a nice return to the tone it carried in the first 2 seasons.
Oh hell yeah.
I'm genuinely curious to see how much more struggles Subaru will be faced with. Now, if you like...
And we'll know that in today's episode, right? The first episode of season 4, it felt like a transition closing off the last season. I don't really count it as like an official episode. What is this? Oh, cool. There's like a button that you can hide and show, you know, the final elements here. In the second episode, by the end, that was like, oh, we are back. Now I remember how, you know, fucking scary ReZero was. And in today's episode, I think it's going to be more absolutely insane. Thank you, Mr. Aninews, for the cut content. And I'll see you guys, I guess, in the next one. Bye-bye. Go check out his channel, please. Go check out his channel. Go give the video a like, you know, and subscribe and all that. And see you next time.